Shalom Aleichem, this is Rabbi Kovacs. We have another exciting installment of Mishnah Yomi. We are in the 9th and final chapter, Perek Tet of Sotah, Perek Eglah Arufah, and we are in Mishnah 8, Hes. Eid Echad Omer, one witness comes forward. You understand they're trying to solve the mystery, the whodunit, the mysterious dead body. One man comes forward, he says, Ra'iti et hahorig, he says, I saw the crime. Eid Echad Omer lo ra'ita, and another man says, no, you didn't see it. Apparently they were together. He says, we didn't see that. Isha Omeret Ra'iti, a woman says, I saw. Isha Omeret lo ra'it, another woman says, no, you didn't see it. Hayu Orfin, they would still do the ceremony of the Eglah Arufah because you still have a suffix. You still have a doubt. We haven't established a legal fact of who the killer is. Eid Echad Omer Reiti, and what if one witness says, I saw this crime, Shnayim Omrim Lo Reita, and two says, no, we were there, you couldn't have seen it, we didn't see anything, Hayu Orfin, they would do the ceremony. But Shnayim Omrim Re'inu, if two witnesses come and say, we saw the crime, we know who did it, Echad Omer Lahem Lo Reitim, and one other one says, no, I was there too, you couldn't have been there, you didn't see that, Lo Hayu Orfin, they would not do the Arifah because we have testimony from two people, and we learned earlier about the Isha Sotah, even if these two people are not normally qualified to be witnesses in court in financial cases, but that's enough testimony to no longer have a suffix. We no longer have a doubt on our hands because we have two people who can come forward and identify the criminal. Now on to Mishnah Tet, and the rest of the chapter really brings these amazing and somewhat scary Mishnayot about the decline of Jewish values in society towards the end of the Second Temple era. Misha Rabu Harotzchanim, when the famous murderers, the career criminals, increased in Eretz Yisrael, Batla Eglah Arufah. They stopped performing the ritual of Eglah Arufah. Now keep in mind, the entire Eglah Arufah ceremony is because we have an unsolved murder. We have a suffix, a doubt. We don't know who did this crime. So Mishnah explains, Misha ba Eliezer ben Donai. Eliezer ben Donai was a famous murderer. He was killing people left and right, God forbid, lo aleinu. So if they found a victim, chances were it was most likely from this criminal. Utchina ben Prisha hayanikra. Originally, his name was Techina ben Prisha. This Eliezer ben Donai was an alias because he was on the run. And finally, Chazur likroto ben Harachtzan. They finally called him the son of the killers, the prodigal son of murderers. Now, Kahati brings an explanation that originally he was a resistance fighter defending the Jewish people against the Romans. He was a Ben Prisha. He was one of the Prushim, one of the Kanaim, one of the zealots against the Romans, and eventually he turned to just robbing and killing people left and right. Now, the Mishnah gets back to Sotah, Misha Rabu Hamanafim, when the adulterers increased in Eretz Yisrael. Understand this is after centuries of Greek influence and then decades of Roman influence and occupation and domination of society, where these values, unfortunately, Greek and Roman values, were creeping into Jewish society. So at this point, Pasku Amayim Amayim, they stopped doing the bitter waters. They stopped doing the Sotah ritual. The Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai Hivsikon. It was actually Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was one of the last sages of the Sanhedrin during the Temple era. He actually lived through the Churban Beis HaMikdash, the destruction of the Second Temple. He's the one who put a stop to this practice. Shenemar, and he explained, there's a pasuk. There's actually the Navi Hosea, chapter 4. The pasuk is, Lo efkod al bnotechem. I'm not going to test and check your daughters, ki tiznena, when they might have been unfaithful, al kalotehem, and your daughters-in-law, ki tina'afana, when they are accused of adultery. Kihem, because them, the Gomer, etc., meaning because the men are also engaged in harlotry and adultery. And the idea, we've seen an idea earlier in the Masechta, when the husband is naki me'avun, is clean of sin, he hasn't committed any adultery, then the mayim could test the wife as well. But a husband who, God forbid, engaged in adultery himself, what right does he have to bring his wife accused of adultery to be tested, to erase Hashem's holy name, to perform a test when he's guilty of the same crime? The test wouldn't even work. So since this unfortunately became somewhat more common, and you understand, if you've gone from 0 to 1%, that's a lot more common in a Jewish society, in a Torah society, then they would run into a situation where women who were actually guilty could be tested with the Mei Sotah and not die because their husband was also guilty of adultery, and a lot of adulterers would get off the hook, and people would, doubt that the entire test works in the first place. And it's interesting, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai brings the pasuk that talks about daughters and daughters-in-law, and the Kahati explains if the father's generation is also guilty of adultery, they can't demand that their daughter's generation lives up to the highest moral standards either. So on a practical level, if the husband is guilty of adultery, the Mei Sotah won't work, even if she does drink it. And in a general societal level, if people around this woman accused of adultery are also being unfaithful and engaged in flirtatious and immoral and inappropriate behaviors, she's not going to take the whole thing seriously. And the institution of Mei Sotah, the Sotah ritual, loses its deterrent effect to prevent this kind of non-Jewish behaviors. One thing we should keep in mind is even during the era they were performing the ritual of Sotah, it was extremely rare. And one hint to this is back in chapter 3, we were talking about, does the Sotah bring the mincha first or drink the water first and then bring the mincha and then the waters work? And it's a machlokis. Rabbi Shimon says she brings the mincha and then she drinks and then the waters work right away. The other sages say no, the waters don't actually become effective until afterwards when she's brought the carbon mincha. Now, if they were doing a Sotah every month or every year, there would have been a clear Masorah. We would have known exactly what the procedure was, but it was extremely rare even during the times when it was an option. Now the Mishnah adds a related concept, Mishamet Yosi ben Yoezer ish Tzreida, Yosi ben Yochanan ish Yushalayim. These are the famous personalities mentioned in Pirkei Avos as well, the Zugos, the pair of scholars who would learn together. Botlu Hashkolot, the Eshkolot stopped. Now, Eshkolot is literally a cluster, like a cluster of grapes, but our sages use this as a word, ish kol bo, a man who knows the entire Torah. He knows everything by heart. Shnamar in the Navi Micha, ein eshkol lechol, there's no cluster to eat. Bikura ivta nafshi, my soul is wanting a ripe fig. So there's nothing to eat. This is in a spiritual sense. If your Rebbe knows the entire Torah, then there's no doubt. He can explain it to you. He knows all the potential contradictions and how to resolve them. But if you don't know every aspect of Torah, then you might think you understand one concept, but there's really another Mishnah or another Gemara that sheds more light on the topic. That's one of the many reasons it's important to learn all of Shas. It's good to specialize in one Masechta or one Gemara or one area of study, but to also learn everything, to learn Mishnah Yomi or Daf Yomi and see, at least get a sense of what's out there in all areas of Jewish law and Hashkafa. Yishar Kochachem, Zai Gesund.